Alrighty. Let's see. Hello, everybody. How do I actually make my video portrait, I wonder? Maximize. There we go. Okay, so this time around we're trying portrait orientation. In case people are watching from their phones, that might be a lot easier to deal with. Okay, so I'm actually really excited for this one. We have we get questions about design sprints all the time, and we figured it might make sense to just kind of answer them live in a stream. So if you have any questions about design sprints, feel free to put them in the chat, and then I'll just like spotlight them on the screen and we'll start going through them. And let me see if I can get this fancy streaming software to show. There you go. Send your questions in the chat. And I can probably get started. What I'll also do is I'll share, let me see, where is that? I think I'll share my screen and show you like some questions that I have prepared already. All right, so we could also tackle these questions that you're looking at here on the screen. All right. So these are like what you're seeing on screen are some of the most common questions that we usually get about design sprint. And so I'm happy to go through them, but I would also prefer to just kind of keep my eye on the chat and see what you all are interested in, and we can go through that. So we'll go back into full screen mode here again. Nice to see people in the chat. Hey, Martin. Hey, Barry. Hey, Mehdi. Mehdi saying just landed on one of the videos and stuck for 5 hours. I hope it's a good kind of stuck. Question from Barry. Do you have to be a designer to run a design sprint, or can you wing it as a Scrum Master? That's a really good question. It's actually one of the questions that is one of the ones that we usually get here. Like I even have it, like it's literally the first question that I had because we get this question so often. And the answer is like, I kind of wish like the design sprint process had a different name. So the short answer is no, you absolutely don't need to be a designer in order to do a design sprint. Where the name comes from is like, so obviously it kind of borrows from the Scrum world. So as you probably know, like you've run sprints, but different kinds of sprints. And I believe the name was inspired from the Scrum world as like, this intense period where like you accomplish a lot. And then it put the word design on the front end to kind of design Scrum sprints. And the idea is that it's more for like designing solutions for challenges. But when you start reading the book, for example, if you don't have this book, it's a great read. I'm showing it here on camera. It's called Sprint: Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days by Jake Knapp. It's a very easy read. And so when you start to go through it, you find out that, well, it's not a process just for designers. Actually, it really kind of doesn't work if it's just a room filled with designers. Rather, the idea is that it helps like a group of basically stakeholders from like different parts of a company. So marketing, sales, design, and operations, customer support, all kind of come together and work on a challenge, co-create solution ideas kind of upstream. And then basically Scrum, you could be using Scrum on the development end to do all of the execution work, right? So in that way, they're very complementary. And I think for you, like as a Scrum Master, Barry, it'll probably be like a very natural thing to pick up, and something that will probably really help you have a little bit more control over the stuff that is passed on to you, right? Because a lot of decisions that get handed to like Scrum teams usually happen without their involvement. And it's a very much like a waterfall process in terms of the handover from like business stakeholders to the execution team. And a design sprint is a fantastic bridge for that, right? All right, so I hope that answers that question, Barry. Again, if you're just joining, welcome. The stream, we figured we'd make it because we get asked all the time about design sprint. And I'm really happy to answer any question that somebody asks in the chat, including super basic questions, right? If you don't know a lot about design sprint and would like to find out more about it, right? You know, it should be something that you should learn or kind of pay attention to or not. So feel free to put any questions in the chat. And I'll just go back to this one here. So maybe I'll start going through some of the questions that I have here on the board, and I'll try to zoom in a little bit so that this isn't too small. Let me see if I actually make this wider. Would it still work? Yeah. Let's see if we can make that work. All right, so we kind of gone through this already. All right, so by the way, for those of you who don't really know, like, you know, maybe you've heard of the term design sprint, you're not really sure what it is. It's basically a process for problem solving that is based on this book by Jake Knapp. That's probably too small. Let me just maximize this again. So this is the book. It's called Sprint. I really, really recommend grabbing it. You know, you can just get it for like $10 in most cases off of Amazon or any bookstore. You could get the Kindle version. You could get an audio version. And it'll give you a really good idea of what the process is about. And so the idea of the sprint is that it takes work that normally happens in companies when they're working on like a product or like their main service offering, work that usually takes weeks, sometimes months, and it boils it down to just like 5 days, right? And we're huge fans of that process. We've been using it since 2016. We've run hundreds of sprints, trained thousands of people on how to run a design sprint. And yeah, like we haven't really been taking advantage of you know, LinkedIn live streams, and we just kind of constantly get asked questions about the design sprint. And so I figured I'd just do kind of a live today to see so that we can basically have a back and forth, and I could answer any questions that you all have about the design sprint. Another question from Barry: is there still demand for design sprints? Is it a big part of AJ&Smart's revenue stream? Yeah, like design sprint literally like transformed our company. We've made probably like millions of euros over the years from the design sprints. And our design sprint to this day are still priced very premiumly, which basically like validates the fact that a lot of people still want design sprints. And we also know that because we've trained thousands of people on doing design sprints, and those people are in our online communities for when they take our trainings, and they keep posting about, you know, all the business opportunities that they're getting and like the design sprints that they're getting booked for, and they kind of celebrate every time they close a deal that is, you know, a client coming to either have them facilitate a design sprint for them or train them on how to do design sprints internally, right? So like between those two things, there's still a ton of demand. So some companies will have limited resources at times, or like their resources are constrained. So even if they could run a design sprint, they literally, like, everybody's so busy that they can't really do that. And so that's when they usually bring in somebody external who can run the design sprint for them. But a lot of times, if like budget is more of a concern, then bringing in an external consultant to do the design sprint for you can be expensive, and they'd rather just kind of get trained on it. And so once you learn the design sprint and like you know it enough to both run it and train people on it, you really like expand your market so that you're not only just kind of selling design sprint. And it's also super useful for anybody working within a team, you know, like a scrum master, like anybody who really like touches the product process, or is involved in designing the service offering for a company. A design sprint can make your life so much easier by just reducing the amount of time and like the amount of meetings, and like you're constantly getting into meetings, but no decisions are happening. And like, it's really hard to make progress quickly or iterate on the product. And it feels like the company's just like too slow, and design sprints really help you fix all of that, right? So I hope that answers that question. And I'll just go back here and start going through these questions. So that kind of gives you hopefully an idea of what a design sprint is. People are also usually curious about, who created the design sprint? Like, where did this kind of random process come from, right? So it was created by a guy called Jake Knapp. And so again, like, I have the book here. Let me see if I can get it in focus. Yeah. And it says like from Google Ventures, right? So Jake Knapp created this process while working at Google, and it was used internally at Google to create a few products, including Google Meet, what is now called Google Meet, started out as Google Hangouts. And over the years, kind of Google really perfected this process. So it started out, they kind of fell into it by accident, where they just like all blocked off an entire week to work on a chat product because they just wanted something simple for them to use internally. And that they ended up creating the design sprint. Then they started to use it in Google Ventures when they were working in startups, investing in them. They wanted a way to quickly validate basically the startup ideas in just basically a handful of days. And a design sprint was also perfect for that, right? So that answers that. Let me see if there's anything new in the chat. Okay, so I have a question from Martin. Who is the buyer now for design sprints? Yeah, so like in terms of like our customers for design sprints, they tend to be most of the time, well, they really range from like either startups to like very like large corporations, and sometimes even like nonprofit organizations who want to get trained on doing design sprints so that they can move faster, they can test ideas more quickly. So it's really like we've worked with companies from all sorts of different industries. We worked with medical, manufacturing, automotive, furniture companies. What else? We've worked like there are some companies that we've worked with like, that I can talk about publicly. So we've worked with Google, with Twitter. Like obviously, like in the product and digital space, design sprints are huge, but they're also like very applicable outside of like that Silicon Valley product space, right? So I hope that answers the question, Martin. Martin says like you used to be a PO. So like, yeah, this is, so if you still kind of work in the product world and you've not looked at design sprints very closely, I think it would be very easy for you to pick it up. It'd be very natural, and like you'll be like, yep, exactly. Like it's really like a revelation once you go through the book and you read more about it, and like you keep getting hit with these moments of like, oh, this is gonna make things so much easier, right? I remember that was the way it was for me in the beginning. All right, and there's another question from Sophia. So is it possible to run a design sprint as an external consultant alone, live and remote? Any experiences you know of? My experience running a design sprint as part of a company, it's hard to deal with the more complex exercises and other distractions without a co-facilitator. So yeah, it can certainly be difficult, trying to do an entire design sprint by yourself, but it's also doable. But maybe in the beginning, it's easier if you're able to get some people to help you with it. Although I know that can be a luxury, not always possible. But what you could do in that case to make it a little bit easier for yourself, even if you don't stick to I do still think that you should go through the entire process. But what you can do just to kind of make it not so overwhelming for one person to be leading it is maybe extend the time a little bit. So maybe instead of it happening over the course of just like 5 days, instead you could maybe do it over the course of like 1.5 weeks, right? So that you're extending the time that you have to do all of the sprint related tasks. And also AJ&Smart has put out a lot of videos on our YouTube channel just talking about how we've optimized the design sprint as a consulting tool. So we make clear separations of who needs to be in the sprint for how long, because in the when you like go through the book and you read how it works, the book tells you like basically everybody needs to be there for the entirety of the 5 days, but that can be like really restrictive and can make it a non-starter for a lot of teams, a lot of companies, where like if you want senior people to participate, it's going to be very difficult for them. And it's just like basically impossible to convince them, right? And so because we wanted to use it as a consulting tool, we knew that also was going to severely limit how much we're able to sell design sprints to clients. And so what we've done was we basically sat down and thought like, all right, maybe like just the senior stakeholders, we only need them for the first couple of days. Basically only for the workshop portion. So in the book, you have 3 days of workshopping, then 1 day of prototyping, 1 day of user interviews. And what we've done is like we actually use some principles from the design sprint itself to kind of make it even a little bit more efficient, especially since we're going to be trying to do the heavy lifting for our clients. So we can, do some of the work outside of the sprint, and that allows us to cheat a little bit and make the sprint go faster. And so basically we're only asking people to take part in 2 days, and then the rest of the time we're just running the process in the background for them, as opposed to trying to come to a client and say like, you have to clear your calendar for an entire week, which is a much harder sell. So whether we're talking like internally trying to sell your team on doing it, or you're coming in as an external consultant, selling people on 5 days is really hard. Now you also mentioned kind of both live and remote. I assume you mean kind of in-person versus remote, and we've done like dozens and like hundreds of sprints in both configurations. So obviously like we ran like hundreds of sprints pre-COVID and post-COVID, and so we've tested both ways of doing it extensively, and the quality is like pretty much the same, right? So it doesn't really change. It's certainly possible. You could even look up our design sprint Miro template or mural template to see our exact process for how we do it, and you could run it remotely as well. Let me see if I answered all of that. Yeah, so I hope that gave you enough information. Alrighty. So Martin says you already done the course and you've done it with us. Well, I hope you do stick around, Martin, because I have kind of an update about that part, and I'll share it a little bit later in the call. Next question here from Barry. What made you guys do a call dedicated to design sprint? Do you have more requests for design sprints than you can deliver? It's just the fact that because we went so all in on design sprints, we get asked about them all the time, right? It's just like usually in the form of DMs, comments on our YouTube videos, things like that. And we even like shot a video for, answering just like the most common questions that we usually get asked. And that is like what I have here on this mural board. So like I just kind of took all these questions, put them on sticky notes, and figured we'd go through them on this call. But I also wanted to test it with a live stream, because it can be just kind of like a back and forth between all of us, and I figured that might be a nice thing. But there's in terms of like design sprint demand, obviously it gets affected. So I'm not going to say like, oh, it's like always been like at the like always been at the top and like super high demand all the time. Obviously it fluctuates with the markets, with economic conditions. So like there was a lull last year in terms of design sprint requests, and that's what I'm saying like about the balance of consulting versus training. So usually when like there's some like a recession going on, and like all companies are spending less money on external consultants, that's when they usually start to shift to training, and they want to usually like train their own internal people on how to do design sprints, because they figure like, hey, if I can train somebody internally or like a group of people, and now suddenly I have like a bunch of people who are able to facilitate these design sprints, it's going to be much cheaper for me than bringing in an external consultant every time. And so it kind of fluctuates between those two things. And the beauty is that when you kind of do both training and consulting, you can, even when one of them is not in peak demand, usually the other one does pretty well. All right. Next question here from Mehdi is, I'm working on a startup and trying to figure out a solution for 7 different brands. After a long struggle, I bumped into design thinker term, led me to Agile, Scrum, design sprint. And yeah, I think there are a lot of processes out there for the product world. Sorry. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, sorry. So I think it's the question might be cut off for me, or it might not just be a question. Yeah, but basically that's just Mehdi saying how he discovered design sprints. Another question here is like, can you do design sprints for service design? And you absolutely can. It's just that the book doesn't really discuss that a lot. It mostly focuses on product challenges. And it just means that your prototyping stage might look a little bit different when you're tackling service design. But it's certainly like very applicable, especially like everything leading up to the prototyping and the user interviews can be pretty much the same. It's just like what you basically decide to prototype and how that looks like. So the prototype might actually be testing out ideas in a live environment, and the way you test it is just by having actual customers try it out, or you bring people who, again, like you would in a normal design sprint, go through your prototype, or whichever thing, whatever you decide to set up as a prototype, you go through it, and they give you feedback. But we have used it for service design in the past. Do you have a resource for how to market design sprints for new consultants? I think so. I think if you search YouTube for like how to sell design sprint and like type AJ&Smart, I believe we do have a video about it. And so you can give that a search and see what comes up. And yeah, I think that video would probably be the best, since you can just kind of watch it, rewatch it, use it as a checklist of things to start working on, and hopefully that will help. Sophia says like, the template, it's really good. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad you found it useful. And one of the questions we always get as well is like, and the title of the stream is, is design sprint still relevant in 2024, right? So I wanted to put that, title in the form of a question, because I was also curious to see if there are any people in the audience who have felt, if they have like a different perspective, right? So by the way, like we're not biased or like, just married to the design sprint process. We really fell in love with it years ago because of what it offered us, and it made us kind of now pay attention to this area. Like we never used to think about like, a process for doing the work. We'd always just be focused on the work itself. But we really became, after the design sprint, big kind of process and collaboration nerds. So we started looking like, okay, what else is out there that can help people work together much better and like collaborate so much faster. And we actually started doing other stuff, apart from the design sprint, right? We started doing custom workshops for clients. We just kind of took the principles and the techniques from the design sprint and started to apply them to different contexts. So We do like, product strategy. We do a marketing kind of sprint, right? Where we're just kind of coming up with all sorts of marketing ideas and testing them out through like ads or content and seeing what works. And we started to like use it for all different sorts of contexts. And so we're always on the lookout for seeing like, is there anything else out there that has come along that does what the design sprint does better? And so far our answer has been no, right? So like obviously like we're using things that are like similar to the sprint that are custom workshops that we created, but there hasn't been kind of like a step change or something that is so transformative that completely replaces this entire way of working for us, right? And so I have a video actually that I would like to play for you all that I didn't want to play in the beginning, just to make sure that somebody, if they join a little bit late, they don't miss it. But I'm going to play you a video from a special guest that we work with. So we actually work with Jake Knapp. We've partnered with him. We've been like partners with him for about like 5 or 6 years now, because we offer the official Design Sprint Masterclass that we created alongside Jake Knapp. And I was curious to know, like, how would Jake answer the question of whether design sprints are still relevant in 2024? And I got him to record a little video for us. And so let me know if you guys want to see that. Just let me know in the chat. Or maybe you don't really care about what Jake has to say. I'll just set that up here. Okay. All right. I know there's a little bit of a delay usually in the chat, but I was just waiting for people to see if they're interested in hearing from Jake directly. So I'm going to play the video for you right now.
Yeah, so is the design sprint relevant today? It's a great question. It has been a long time since the book came out. It's been...
Hold on, let me...
Yeah, so is the design sprint relevant today? It's a great question. It has been a long time since the book came out. It's been, I don't know, like... Anyway, book came out in 2016. It's been a while. So the thing is that a lot of the challenges that people faced in 2016, they seem different now, right? Like, oh, more people are doing stuff over video now, and, all those AI now and everything. And it seems like, oh, it's so different. But like fundamentally, it's still the same stuff, right? It's still hard to work with a team. If you're working with a team of people, like it's hard to get the best contributions from every person on the team. Like that's just still true. It's hard if you are doing something new and you're trying to figure out, okay, if we do this, like, are people in the end, are they going to want it? Like, it's hard to figure that out. And the design sprint allows you a way to like work together, bring the best of everybody's contributions, make decisions really fast, get alignment really fast, test your ideas really fast, see if you're on track. That stuff, that's pretty fundamental. And, when I first created the process, it was even longer ago, back when I was working at Google, I thought at the time when I very first created it, hey, this will be a thing just for teams at Google doing consumer products. I was really thinking like Gmail, maps, search, stuff that people use, everyday people used. And I found over the years first that at Google, we could use it for things that have expert users, like the ad tools, And then in working at Google Ventures, I found, we can use this for all kinds of situations, not just for software. We can use it for hardware. We can use it for services. We can use it for experts. Physicians could benefit from products designed in a design sprint. And running now my own venture fund, Character Capital, we found like, hey, this works really well for AI. Like if you have an AI project, you're going to need to change the behavior of the people who use it. They're going to need to understand this whole new thing. In fact, that's probably an even more dramatic change than a new product from 10, 15 years ago. a design sprint is a great way to craft it. So, if you're working over video, it helps you kind of be more of a team, more of a team who's really collaborating together. It gives you the structure that I think that I certainly, when working away from my teammates, kind of crave and really benefit from. So yeah, man, it's still, I think it's still really relevant. I'm still running them all the time. And the founders, the folks that I work with, they're still finding it to be super valuable. If anything, I got to say maybe more valuable than it was when it first came out.
Alrighty. So I hope you guys enjoyed hearing from the man himself, from Jake. It was really cool of Jake. Like, it was just like this idea for this entire stream was something that we thought up this week, and figured like, let's kind of do a live stream, see if people have questions about the sprint, if they think it's still relevant. Now, obviously, you might say like, oh, like, yeah, but AJ&Smart, and like, of course, Jake Knapp, the person who created the process, is going to think that it's still relevant. But the thing is, the way we answer that question of whether or not it's relevant is by looking at two things. One is, is there still like demand for it in the market? Are we still getting asked to train people on it? Are we still getting asked to do design sprints? And the answer to both of those is yes. So that is the first question. The second question being, has anything else come along that can do what the design sprint can do, but like better or faster or more easily, right? And the answer to that, as far as I know, has been no, right? And if any of you kind of like disagrees or like has like a counterpoint, I'd actually like love to hear it. Like the point of like today is not really to just push like that, just like design sprint is the best like forever or anything like that, right? But I actually like love to hear about, from different perspectives, and see if somebody has come along, come across something that's better, that does what the design sprint can do, but maybe a little bit differently, faster, better, more easily, right? Okay. And again, just as a reminder, depending on when you joined, you may or may not have heard me say this, but if you have any questions about the process, please put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer any of them. But I also have a list of questions here that are the most common questions that we get about the design sprint that I've been going through. So I'll prioritize questions in the chat, but whenever there's but whenever I don't see any new questions in the chat, I'll just go through the ones that are right here. All right. So one of the questions that we get, we hear like all this hype about design sprint. How is it, how can you actually do that much work? Like, how can you promise to do that much work in just 5 days, right? And people say like, it must be like the quality must be like so bad, or, there must be like a catch. You're just like kind of hyping things up and it's not actually that good. And the answer to that is like, there is a little bit of like cheating in the process, right? So like the way you cheat in the process is by, when it comes to the prototyping, rather than going ahead and like building something, which is usually the thing that takes the most amount of time, instead you kind of fake it and you just build like a facade of something that works, right? So you create like a fake prototype. So it's not a working prototype that you're creating in a design sprint. But the thing about that is that although it feels like cheating, it can still get you a ton of data. So to be clear, like a design sprint cannot help you test everything that you would test with a real product that's on the market. Because obviously, like, let's say it can't help you test the performance. Let's say like you have an app or a website, you can't really test the performance of that app, like how fast, how smooth is it? You can't really test that in a design sprint because this is not the real product. It still needs to be built, implemented. So that's not something you can test. But what you can test is, okay, if I like build this new, like I want to like jump on the AI train, and like I have this thing that kind of takes advantage of ChatGPT to like maybe help you with like marketing, right? Like we'll come up with all sorts of like marketing ideas for you and help you create these viral videos, right? And so when you create something like that, you're gonna have to like put it into some sort of like interface, right? And you can test out like, do people just like want to chat, kind of like Chat GPT style, or would they like, you know, some templates and like some pre-populated prompts? How would they want to deal with that? What does it look like if, you know, what would a user do if like they want to change something and they don't like the answer that we've given them? They customize it a little bit? How would that work? Are people interested in this entire idea in the first place? These are all questions that you can answer um, with a fake prototype. You don't need the working prototype in order to test those ideas and get answers to those questions, right? So, and the other way, like that, the process kind of has a little bit of magic to it is that humans tend to be like super inefficient at just like collaboration and talking, and each person just kind of goes on and on and on, even though they could have communicated the same idea a lot more quickly, a lot more succinctly. Like we've all been in meetings that felt like they've just like gone on for too long. You know, like a 5-minute conversation turns into a 30-minute conversation for no reason. And so the sprint really, like the part of the magic is that just how it structures things, and it has figured out like, okay, to kind of get everybody to align on a goal that we're going for, we just need 30 minutes. We don't need to be talking about it for like multiple hours, right? So we have these techniques. Instead of everybody talking at the same time, we're going to write things on sticky note. Instead of like talking again to decide which idea we want to take, we're all going to use just red dots for voting, right? And so it uses these mechanics and techniques that really speed up things. And it's also the fact that you're asking people to join, like set aside like a big chunk of time, because if you're doing work over like disconnected meetings, 1 hour here, 1 hour there, and like you're only doing that once or twice a week, it's natural that the work is going to take so long to progress, because it's just like spread apart. And at the beginning of each meeting, you have to like remember what you discussed in the previous meeting. But with a sprint, you're just kind of putting everything together over the span of a couple of days and these workshops, and you're able to accomplish a lot more that way, right? So even though it's a little bit like cheating, it's actually like that combination of like you're faking the product and you're using these collaboration techniques, right? Okay. Let me see which next question we can take here. And by the way, I might have mentioned earlier that we, like AJ&Smart, has created the official Design Sprint Masterclass with Jake Knapp, and also figured like we're going to be talking about design sprints anyway. People might be interested in this course if they haven't taken it already. And we figured we could just kind of do like a special thing just for today and tomorrow and offer it at a significant discount. So I'm just going to put up a QR code on the screen, and you can just scan that with your phone, and it'll take you to a page that tells you all about our official design sprint masterclass with Jake Knapp. And so again, that it also goes back to the question of, are they still relevant in 2024? So you've heard from Jake a little bit about why he thinks it's still relevant, but that's not all. He also actually updated the process recently. So because the sprint itself kind of matured inside of Google over the course of multiple years, it's only natural to ask like, well, is the design sprint as a process just like so perfect to the point where it never needs to be updated or changed? And the answer to that is, of course, no. Like everything can be updated and changed to be better. And so Jake's actually been like working behind the scenes, and we've actually worked with him behind the scenes to kind of have some conversations, because we have the perspective of doing it as consultants, and we found like a lot of like tips and tricks for making it a little bit better, a little bit smoother, a little bit faster. And now all of these things have been added to the official Design Sprint Masterclass, and we just have like a gigantic sale. Like I think we managed to kind of convince the team to do like a 70% sale of the Design Sprint Masterclass, which has 10 hours of new and updated content about everything that changed with the process, right? So that's just on the screen. It's just a page that you can check out if you're interested in learning more about it. That being said, of course, if you're just here to ask questions, like that's exactly what this live stream is about. Like I'm happy to answer any questions for you here live if you're not interested in taking the course. And if you have any questions about the process, if you're curious about anything, just put your question in the chat. And I'm just looking at the chat here to see if any new questions have come in. For a one-person UX team, how would you be able to integrate design sprints into that effectively, right? My current team is just like one UX designer and me and one UI designer. So the way to do that actually is like, it depends. Can you tell me whether like, is that like the entire company? Is it like a company of like 2 people? Or are there other people that are outside of the UX team? Because if it's the latter, then it's actually like not a problem at all that you're the only person in the UX team, and like there's another person who's like a UI designer. Because the point of a design sprint, this is something I mentioned in the beginning, but if you weren't there for that, a design sprint is not really meant to just be used by designers. What a design sprint helps you do is like avoid all of the messiness that usually happens when you're trying to work on a product. Because what happens is that, somebody in the company, like in a small company, it would be like the CEO, or in a larger organization, it would be the product owner, working with like senior people at a company to decide like what should the product do, how are we going to set ourselves apart in the market, what do customers want, and all these conversations happen behind like closed doors, and then they just kind of hand off those decisions to the team, and they tell them like, all right, now you go and build this, right? But obviously as a UX designer, UI designer, you might think like, oh, but like, we haven't considered like all of the implications of these decisions. And if we had, maybe we can like do it differently. But at that point, your boss might tell us like, no, I just need you to do it, right? And you might have to do something even though you know it's not the right call for the product, but you have to do it, right? And yeah, like you're saying in the chat that there are other people. There's a CEO and a COO. And there are 20 developers, right? So for your kind of team, it would make sense to, if it's like a smaller company, like fewer than basically 100 people, it might make sense to, whenever like you need to do like a big new feature or like a big iteration on the product, to do a design sprint and involve the CEO, involve the COO, right? Involve somebody from marketing, somebody from, if you have like a sales department, somebody from customer support. And the idea is like the design sprint helps you bring all those people together and co-create new ideas for how things should be improved, because each person will bring something different to the table. The customer support will tell you like what people are complaining about and what things could be changed. Like maybe there's a certain part of the product that's really confusing. Somebody from marketing will be able to tell you like how we can position the product and like how we can talk about it maybe on like the App Store page in a way that's kind of compelling, and we can test that entire flow with users, right? And they'll be able to like help you craft better copy for the onboarding, for example. And the CEO might have like certain opinions about what the product should do, but if you have data from the product, then you can show that data in the room and tell them like, yeah, even though that sounds like a good idea, we actually have data that shows like that's not what customers want. So it helps you organize all of those conversations that would typically either not even happen, and like people make decisions that are not super well informed, and then that results in like all sorts of missed performance goals and like the product not doing well, or it results in a lot of frustration when people feel like, if only we could just kind of sit in the room when these decisions are happening so that we can protect our product from going in the wrong direction, right? A question from Ala: if we already signed up for the Design Sprint Masterclass, how can we get the update? So Ala, if you already have the Masterclass, you should probably have received an email from us today that tells you about the update. And I'm just going to take a note down here to check if you're on that email list, and I'll make sure that you also get that. Yeah, don't worry about it. If all you want is the update, we also have like a special path for you. So I'll make sure that we reach out. I'm looking to move into freelance facilitation. Does this course touch on things that on things to consider when making that transition? Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just put up the QR code on the screen again. So if you want to get into freelance facilitation, and this is Brad's question. So Brad, if you want to get into freelance facilitation, the Design Sprint is a fantastic tool for like moving into that world, because it gives you like something to sell. Like one of the hardest things in the beginning for somebody to explore, and like we've also taught like thousands of facilitators. We have like our like paid facilitator community that is not it's kind of like a closed community for people who have taken our trainings, and we like talk to facilitators all the time. And one of the biggest challenges that they have is just like finding something to sell in the beginning. And so a design sprint, like our own facilitation journey, all started with design sprints, and it's still a fantastic tool to this day. So regardless of whether or not you look into our course, you can just like basically get the book for $10. And if you're super strapped on budget, you can do that. But obviously, it will take you a little bit longer. Like you can go through the book, you can go through our YouTube videos. But if you want to move like super, super fast and want to hear us talk about how we've changed the process so that it can be packaged more as a consulting product, then you can check out the Design Sprint Masterclass, which like there's a huge discount on it only for today and tomorrow. And so you can just like look at that, see if you're interested in it, and you can decide whether or not this is the right time for you to consider something like that. But to answer your question, it does have, it does touch obviously on how to like facilitate the design sprint itself. And as part of like the summer sale that we have going on right now, we're bundling in our design, like a facilitation course. So like we have, in addition to the design sprint masterclass, if you like look at that page and you get to the checkout, you'll also have a special offer for exploring our facilitation masterclass. And so you can look into that once you get to the checkout card. Question from Barry, like, how do we get the book for $10? I haven't checked the pricing on Amazon recently, but like the paperback version usually goes for something around that, at least in Germany, but I'm not sure if the price has gone up recently. So like on Amazon, like the book will be between 10 to $15. So, and like the Kindle version is sometimes very cheap. And like on Audible, if you don't have an Audible account, you might be able, and like they usually give you your first book for free. So you could even like get the book entirely for free if you do it through Audible and you don't already have an Audible account. All right. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll just keep an eye on the chat here for a couple of seconds. And if I don't see any new questions, I'll just go back to our frequently asked questions list and take questions from that. All right, so let me see here. Okay, so we've gone through that one. And will also usually ask us about, okay, so we talk a lot about this process, all of that. How good? Right? Have you ever been in a situation where it just like wasn't enough? And I can honestly say that that's like never basically happened because we've just like gotten good now. Like, to be clear, like not every single challenge in the world is like suitable for a design sprint. And normally we have like a few questions to ask in order to determine whether a challenge is suitable for a design sprint. And so once we answer those questions, we can confidently say like, yep, we are going to do a design sprint. And when we do it, we're also confident that it's just going to get the job done and get us what we want. And we basically ask like, is this something that is a huge priority for like the team right now, whether it's like a client team or like us internally, that it warrants us taking a week out of our day to work on, a week out of our time to work on it? Is it something that requires multiple people from different parts of the company to come together, right? And if we say like, if we get yeses to both those questions, then we know that we can be fairly confident that the answer should be yes to running a design sprint. And we even like put out an article about that, so you can just Google basically should I do a design sprint or not, and you'll basically get the answer to that, right? There's also a third question that we usually ask, which is like, is there an obvious solution to the challenge? So if we already know, like, we basically know what we want to do, we're so sure that it feels like it's not even worth us going through like a brainstorming or like ideation phase, because we've already like the answer is so clear, then we would probably also not bother with a design sprint in that case. Another question from Brad. How do you recommend getting practical experience as a new facilitator after taking the course? Yeah, so like if you take the course, first of all, like you'll get access to our facilitator community, and in there we have like dedicated practice sessions. So like it's a very like low stakes learning environment. So it's a safe environment to like, learn even like, and like until you build your confidence and you feel like, okay, like I got this now. Because I know it can be scary to kind of like look at a video and then feel like, okay, now I'm gonna go into a room and just like do that. It would be like trying to learn swimming from a book, right? Where you don't feel like super confident about like jumping into the water if you've never swam in your life, and like now feel like you're just gonna do completely fine, because things feel different when you're in the real thing. And so for us, like we host these practice sessions in our community. But another way to practice, let's say like you don't take part in the course and you don't join the community, just practicing honestly with like friends and family. So if you want, you can look up the Lightning Decision Jam on YouTube, which is one of our favorite workshops. It's like, unlike the design sprint, so the design sprint takes 5 days. So like it says it in the title of the book, right? It says like solve big problems, test new ideas in just 5 days. And so unlike the book, the Lightning Decision Jam is a process that we created after we like fell in love with a sprint, but we wanted something that was a little bit shorter, that could be something that would fit into a meeting. And so it only takes like an hour essentially. So if you look at the Lightning Decision Jam, I've seen a ton of people use Lightning Decision Jam with their kids, with their families, just to kind of work on like a fun, silly challenge, right? And so that's actually like a really like, again, fun way, low stakes way of practicing these skills. Before you feel like, okay, like I'm ready now to use it with my team internally, or I'm ready to start selling it to people. So I hope that helps. All right, and the next question here from Barry. Do participants of this call get any extra special deals? Asking for a friend. So yeah, basically to be honest, like this entire call, like everybody's just like getting a massive deal on this call. And like so basically just a little bit of background for this. Like we thought, we're getting all of these questions, let's just answer them. And let's give people like multiple options for how they want to learn more about it. So obviously, like, again, like the goal of this live stream is to answer any questions here. So like, I'm not going to tell you like, oh, well, to find the answer to that, you got to go to like our course or whatnot, right? But this is more for, obviously, in like 1 hour, I can't cover everything, but I can try to give you like the best answers that I can. And so we figured like we'll do this live stream. We'll answer everybody's questions on the call. But if actually somebody is interested in like maybe a career change, or like maybe like you want to run it inside your company, like your company could even pay for that training. Or sometimes what you can do is like get your company to pay for the training, and then you like later leverage it to make a career move, which we've also seen in the past. Then I figured like, it would be really cool if we're able to offer that to people at a discount. And so it is currently at a 70% discount, which I think it's harder to go higher than that, essentially, right? So I'll just put up the QR code on the screen again for anybody who's interested. But again, like I said, this is just like more of a nice thing that we wanted to do, like because we're doing this live stream. And yeah, this is not one of those things that is like always on sale. It's kind of like a scammy technique where you see that on like some websites, like it's always like with the price crossed out and like it's 90% off. But if you visit any day of the year, it'll always be like that. This is really something that we only do every once in a while, and typically it costs a lot more. And it's honestly, just like this sale is the most affordable way to get that training. Like we still do like in-person trainings, but those are way, way more expensive. And that's so like what makes it so cool about this sale is like you can learn it anytime, doesn't require any travel. In a lot of cases, you could probably get your company to pay for it if you're working at a company, and it gets you like all the information that you need in video form, so you can rewatch it anytime that you want. And you also are able to join a community of people who are in the same places as you are, people who are like trying to do design sprints full time or do facilitation full time and sell custom workshops and do strategy workshops with clients and this and that, right? So I hope that helps. Again, probably gonna go on for like a few more minutes, but then we'll probably call it a day. So if you have any like kind of last minute questions that you want to get into the stream and have me answer them live, feel free to put them into the chat now, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. And I'll just see here. I think there's a little bit of a delay, so sometimes I just have to wait between the time I ask you all whether you have a question and the time that I get a question in the chat. So while that happens, I'm just going to look at the list of questions that I have here and see which ones have we not yet answered. So by the way, like, you might be thinking like this is just super biased, like a single perspective kind of thing, right? So like I know AJ&Smart uses design sprints now, and I know that the Jake Knapp, the guy who created it, uses them a ton, but who else uses it, right? There's a website, actually, it's a pretty cool website that you can visit called sprintstories.com, and you can see like a ton more like use cases and stories from people all over the world using design sprints, and that'll just give you kind of a better idea of where design sprints are applicable and how they can be useful in different contexts. So feel free to check that out. And I think we've kind of we've gone through these already. We talked about whether it's still relevant. We talked about when you should consider it. We might have covered briefly like what you can use a design sprint for. So like we talked about, you can use it for products, you can use it for service-based businesses. You can also use it for like just like marketing and sales ideation to come up with like a new like sales brochure, or to come up with new marketing ideas, like redesign like a landing page, or come up with new like ads within a marketing department, right? So you can use design sprints for all of that. And we also talked about, can I do a design sprint by myself? Of course, it kind of depends what kind of product or challenge you're working on. So if it's a product related challenge, then you can do it by yourself, but you would either need to work, for example, with a designer who would work on the prototype, or if you can do some light prototyping yourself. Like the book even tells you, like you can do your prototypes in like a PowerPoint or like an Apple keynote for the digital products, and that will usually be enough. You don't need to know like any fancy design tools like Figma or Sketch or whatever it is, right? I'll just answer a few more quick ones here. So like, how many people can be in a design sprint? That's also like a question that we often get. And the answer is like the ideal number tends to be between 4 to 8 people. So like fewer than 4, you might not just like get the full benefit of like, having so many ideas from different perspectives. And more than 8, it tends to like make everything drag on a little bit more. And so that tends to be the ideal number. And maybe I'll just move myself here to the top. Oh no, that changes things. That doesn't work. Okay. But to be clear, like you can make a design sprint work with way more people. Who should participate in a design sprint? Like I said, like it should not be just like a single team or department, but you should be trying to get as many diverse perspectives as you can, because each person will bring something different to the table, right? Another question is like we've already answered, is like, does the design sprint need to be 5 days or can it be shorter? And it can certainly be shorter. So like for your stakeholders, you can just tell them, I only need you to participate for 2 days. And after that, I can, run it like by myself for the rest of it, right? Another question, like, what's the difference between design thinking and design sprint? I think somebody earlier was talking, I think it might have been Mehdi, about, just like stumbling upon design thinking and design sprint. And so the way to think about it is like design thinking has a lot of the principles. It's almost like a philosophy and a way of like thinking, of working. And design sprint is like the implementation, like the very specific flavor of design thinking, right? So design thinking tells you like, you should be like focused on the user. You should start by like, building empathy for what the customer is going through, and then you should be thinking of solutions. But it doesn't tell you the how. How are you supposed to do all of these things? But the design sprint is a lot more specific, and it is like step by step tells you what you need to do, and that is like the biggest difference of like design thinking is like you could basically implement it in a bunch of different ways, which is good in terms of flexibility, but it can also be confusing for a lot of people. Like what we've seen is like we've worked with so many customers who said like that they explored design thinking and like it doesn't work for them. The problem is like you need somebody to, be really well experienced in design thinking in order to help a team implement it well. But a design sprint does not require that, because it literally has the step-by-step directions for what you need to do, right? Another question is like, what's the difference between a Scrum sprint or like an Agile sprint, depending on like, even though that's not technically correct, but people just like ask these questions. And so what's the difference between Scrum sprint and a design sprint? And the difference is like they only share the name, but they don't really compete with each other at all. So like the design sprint is really focused on the very upstream work, conceptual work, and a Scrum sprint is more about implementing the ideas, right? So they don't compete really with one another. Another question obviously is like, can I make money with design sprints? And our company would literally not exist if the answer to this question was no. We've made like millions, literally millions of euros selling design sprints. over the past 8 years. We've taught thousands of people on how to do design sprints, how to sell design sprints, and we've seen them post in our communities about them making money. Again, like if you go to that page in the QR code, you'll see screenshots of people sharing their certificates and sharing their stories of how they made it like their full-time job, right? Okay, maybe we can end on this question since I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. What's the best way to learn how to run a design sprint, right? So I'm going to give you like the full spectrum of ways that you can do it. The cheapest, freest way would be to just rely on free resources. So obviously, like today's call was free. Hopefully I answered the questions that you were curious about. Let me also know in the chat if this was useful, if you'd like to show up to like another one of these where I answer more questions live. And so obviously like YouTube, we put out a lot of videos on YouTube, and you can just search AJ&Smart and design sprint, like just those keywords, put them together on YouTube, search for them. You're going to get our videos. Those videos will just take you through the process step by step, and you learn about it. So like you can learn completely for free. The other way would be to like pay like the 10, 15 bucks. So let me just put myself in full screen again. You can just pay like whatever it is, like whatever the book costs, and get the book and read that. It's a very easy read. You could probably read it in a day or two, even if you're a slow reader like me, and English is not your native language. It's a very easy book to read, and that's also like just very affordable, right? And the next step up from that would be to explore something like a paid course, a paid training. Like in-person trainings for design sprints can be like very expensive, but a video course is a lot more affordable. Maybe you can have your company pay for that course, then you don't have to like, pay for it yourself. But if you're thinking of like a career change, you might want to consider just like investing in your skill set so that it can enable you to make that move. And like I said, we're just doing this special sale today and tomorrow. So maybe have a look at the page, see if it makes sense for you, think it over the next, the rest of today and tomorrow, and you can decide whether or not that makes sense for you, right? And so that's basically kind of the spectrum of how you can learn about design sprints. Again, like if you just want to like not ready to like pay any money for this stuff, I don't even know if it works or like if it makes sense for me, totally fine, totally get that. Just focus on the free stuff on YouTube. Then if you're ready for one next step up, again, like you can use that Audible trick I told you about. So if you go to audible.com and you create an account for the first time, I think they give you your first book for free. So you can get the design sprint book that way if you don't want to pay 10 bucks for it. And if you want the fastest way, so obviously like the difference between free versus not free is like the free way will always like take longer because you're having to like do all the work yourself. Whereas, for example, with the paid way, we try to make it as easy for you as possible. We tell you like, how do you prepare for a design sprint? How do you sell it if you want to like do it as your full-time thing? How do you convince your team internally to do it with you? What templates do you need? What are the materials that you need to run a design sprint? What are the mistakes that you should watch out for? So we just kind of condense all of our experience running hundreds and thousands of sprints with clients into like that course, and we like give you access to a community that you can join, where you can like ask questions more about facilitation in general, right? Which include basically design sprints as well. If you're also like interested in facilitation, we do have a free facilitation community. That is one of the things that I think I haven't mentioned up to this point. So you can check out Facilitator Club, and I'll see if I can get the link here real quick. I think it might be easier if you just search AJ&Smart Facilitator Club. You'll find a link, because I don't think I can post the link to all of the channels that this is streaming to, like YouTube, LinkedIn, I think, and Instagram. And so I don't think if I can put something in the chat here, but if you search Facilitator Club AJ&Smart, you'll find our free facilitator community. And that would be another way for you to kind of connect with other people who are interested in facilitation, learning more about it, sharing about it, and feel free to join that completely for free. All right. So I really hope today's stream was useful for everybody. I hope you got your question answered. And if not, I mean, I was trying to keep an eye on the chat. I think we answered everything in the chat. So, but if you didn't, if you just thought of something and like now we're ending, then we'll probably do another one of these soon. Although I'm like, even if I do like a live stream next week, I don't think we'll have the sale then. So if you're interested in like the course itself, you want to explore that, then check out the QR code and check out the page, because like that sale will just not be there forever. It's literally like seriously just only between today and tomorrow. And so check that out and see if it makes sense for you. But if I do another one of these streams soon, you can still show up, ask me any questions completely for free. I'll be happy to answer and, give you our perspective on any questions related to facilitation and design sprints. All right. So I think I'm going to call it a day here, but I want to thank you all so much for joining today and for sticking it out to the end. Hope this was useful, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.